So, good afternoon, and a huge heartfelt welcome to the third annual New England Woodworking Competition, proudly hosted by the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers and held at UNH. We're truly phenomenal day for this event. It's really great, terrific, a lot of great submissions. Really surpassed ourselves this year. It's terrific. For those of you who are new, and for those who have been with us from the start, this year is particularly special. It marks our 35th anniversary of the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers. And we're so busy with this event this year, we completely forgot about it. So we're going to celebrate in the spring. Have a big barbecue out at Carl Moskey's place. So look out for that. And we've certainly come a long way since 18 woodworkers got together with John Siegel in his shop to share ideas. Today, we're well over 750 members strong, grown tremendously in size and scope, and we set a deliberate course to constantly improve the way we work, programs we offer, and the services we provide to the community. Our mission at its core is one of woodworking education, but we're much more than that. We are a collective who teach, we make, we serve our members in the community. And most importantly, we share the passion for working with wood. I think everyone feels that way in this room. Certainly hope so. Now let's talk about why we're all here today. The incredible talent on display. Isn't it terrific, everything you've seen here? This year we received a record-breaking 165 entries. You can believe that. And a couple of weeks ago, I thought we were going to have to cancel the event. The level of craftsmanship and innovation across all categories is really inspiring, and we're making a big effort to diversify and to be inclusive of the youth movement. And you can see that we have quite a selection of cutting boards, as you can see, largely due to a couple of really dedicated teachers, and I'll talk about them a little later. 68 of those 165 entries are from students. Level of craftsmanship is really outstanding, but I really want to give all our student entrants a round of applause. And to those young woodworkers, we're profoundly grateful for their talent and energy. They're the future of this craft, and we encourage you all to continue this rewarding journey. Our support for the next generation is centered around our Guild in Schools program. This initiative is growing exponentially to now include school systems across New Hampshire. And these efforts are largely due to selfless dedication of a few key individuals like John Siegel, like Jack Gruby, Doug Finkel, Mike DiMaggio, David Picard, Eric Robinson, and many others that get involved. They really dedicate countless hours to bring this passion into the classrooms, and thank all of you so much. I'd like to extend a special thanks to the dedicated educators who are championing this craft. Your efforts in supporting the craft and encouraging your students to participate is essential, and we celebrate your dedication. I just want to read off a list of teachers that are involved in this program and supported and motivated their students to enter something this year. And we have some new school systems involved, which is really terrific. Bill Cummings from Buckingham, Brown, and Nichols out of Cambridge. Jeffrey Pfister, John Bapst out of Bangor, Maine. Thomas Moore, Lebanon High School. Eric Drotch, Moses Brown School out of Providence, Rhode Island. Mr. McDonough, Sanborn Regional High School out of Kingston, New Hampshire. Kate Evans came down from Waterville Valley. She was formerly of Franklin Middle School and switched this year. We're very thankful for her coming and getting involved. Doug Finkel, who now seems to be the de facto shop teacher at Gathering Woods, and we really appreciate his efforts. Leah Woods, University of New Hampshire, I'll introduce momentarily. And Paul DiCarlo, who's working Homestead Woodworking School. So this is all terrific, and we really appreciate their efforts. Let's have a round of applause for these educators. This event simply wouldn't run without the countless hours put in by our dedicated team of volunteers and the competition committee. A massive thank you to Steve Costain and the entire committee, including David Picard, Mike DiMaggio, Claude Dupuis, Don Lowe, Jim Wood, Joe Sarna, John Doobie, and I know I'm leaving out a bunch of others, so I apologize. Please join me in thanking them for making this a spectacular weekend possible. And each year we do a debrief on the competition and we listen to feedback, and we get feedback from a number of different people, even if we don't want to hear it. But we do listen, we do incorporate, we evolve, we revise, and we grow. So keep that feedback coming, and hopefully we get better every year. But before we get the competition fully underway, I want to draw your attention to a few special activities. Be sure to check out again, as I mentioned before, the 50/50 raffle. And again, in addition to that cash prize, we have some fantastic products generously donated by Wood Lovers Wax, and the New Hampshire Furniture Masters have given us 4 copies of their recently published collection celebrating their 30-year anniversary. And that incredible anniversary display is now going on at the Curry Museum, and Owen will be talking about that a little later. We also rely every year on incredible generosity of our sponsors. This year we have a presenting sponsor, Wood Lovers Wax, who went beyond our expectations supporting our efforts. And now I have the distinct honor of introducing our presenting sponsor. We're thrilled to welcome their team. They're here to kick off the event and make a very exciting announcement right here on stage. So it was going to be Karen Campman, but she's not feeling up to it at this point. And Eric, her husband, and the son-in-law of the original founder of Wood Lovers Wax, is going to come up and give you a few words. Eric?
As he said, my name is Eric with a K. My wife and I are down in Delaware. We used to live up in New Hampshire in Campton. My father-in-law, George, who created Wood Lovers Wax 20-odd years ago, to preserve and protect his antique tools that he liked to collect, basically needed something that he couldn't find anywhere else. So he turned into a mad chemist in his garage, came up with the formula. We've been using it forever. We finally convinced him a few years ago to start selling it, which we did. And of course, it was gangbusters, but a big question was always, is it food safe? Is it food safe? Well, no, we didn't have a food safe version at that time. So he went back into his garage, became the mad chemist again, came up with our food safe variety, which we are launching today. If you haven't heard my spiel, I'm going to give you my spiel now so I don't have to keep saying it over there when you come over and see it. But it basically is easy application. You wipe it on with one rag, you take it off with another rag. It preserves, it enhances. You can see the results when we do it over there. It's just one of those things that we're very passionate about. So I want to go longer into it, but I don't want to go too long because I know we have a lot of awards. We are very excited to be in this arena here today and to be able to sponsor this. As you've seen, the cutting boards and everything else, the talent is off the charts. When I was 10 years old, the closest I came to woodworking was Pinewood Derby, trying to carve my little car out of, that little block to send it down the track. I do enjoy a little bit of amateur woodworking in my garage, but nothing compared to what we've seen here over the past day. So I really have to applaud all of the entrants here that they're doing great things. And we are also very, very happy to come up with the Next Generation of Makers Award. I'm thrown into this the last second, so forgive me. Anyway, and love to thank the Guild for having us. This is an incredible opportunity, and we hope to be here year after year supporting everything that you see going on here. Yeah, I think that's probably about it. I hope you all have a great time. Come and see us over there. Enjoy all of the entries, and thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about the continued generosity of our other sponsors of the event, who are really valuable to us and we really appreciate. So Michael J. DiMaggio, and you'll hear a lot about the DiMaggio name today and the DiMaggio family. Just a superb amount of generosity in that family. Michael J. DiMaggio is the son of our Mike DiMaggio, who couldn't be here today. He's actually off down in the Caribbean on a cruise, getting a chance to visit the family of a sculptor down there that he sponsored for many years and donated tools to the gentleman's school. Unfortunately, several months ago, he passed away, and this is the first opportunity Mike has gotten to go down there and pay respects to his family. So we all wish him well. But Michael J. DiMaggio has been a benefactor of our events since the beginning. We really appreciate that. Goose Bay Lumber has been a benefactor of the competition for the last few years, and we really appreciate Carl and his family. A family-run business, really feel welcome when you go there and you search for that perfect board that's going to finish your piece off, and always happy to help you and always happy to go there and see what they have available. Is Mike DiMaggio's name. He also gives up not only dozens of vintage tools that he restores, but his time is just incredible, what he does to support the students alone to get them to get to this event, which is really incredible. The Vintage Tool Shop, our friends down in Fremont, New Hampshire, not far from here, have a wonderful collection of vintage tools. Eric hunts the hills and countryside up and down to find those right tools for the perfect use, either if you're a collector or a user. You can always find what you need from Eric and Joyce. Bits and Bits is a company on the West Coast, and they've given us several gift certificates for their products, and they'll be part of the prizes awarded tonight. Franklin International, most of you know him as Tight Bond. Again, a huge supporter of this event year after year, and we really appreciate their support, sponsorship. Freud, they're actually here tonight, and they have been very generous in what they provide us to give away to the winners of the events. A lot of those saw blades you see on display there, as well as many bits and kits, and it's really a pleasure to have them involved with us. Rycon, they are donating an award, and this will go to the best in show. It's a brand new 14-inch Pro Deluxe bandsaw. And we don't expect the winner to be able to put it in their back and put it in their car. It weighs 300 pounds in pieces. But we're offering up the services of our own Steve Costain, who will not only deliver it, but help you put it together. And I don't know any machinist better than him, so you're in luck. Highland Heartwood's a valued sponsor to the Guild and all our members. And if you're not watching Instagram, you should check out Instagram and all of their feeds and the little things they do with James, Ellie, and Frank. They are now selling a bunch of really high quality tools, so you ought to go check them out, in addition to the great selection of lumber they have. UBS there's a local agency in Concord that is happy to work with you with your financial needs, so please go talk to them and check them out. Lee Neeson Tool Works always provides some really high quality tools, and we have some tools to give out to the students tonight, so that's really terrific. Homestead Woodworking, Al Mitchell and his team have been really valuable sponsors and supporters of this effort over the years, and really appreciate that. Woodworks Lakeside Farm, you heard me mention Carl Mosky is our treasurer of the Guild, and he has a terrific sawmill, kiln, slab flattening machine out there in Henniker, New Hampshire. So if you get a chance just to visit, he loves to have visitors. The guy's the greatest tour guide you've ever seen on his farm, and you'll be happy you visited. Woodcraft, first-time sponsor for us. They've donated a number of different precision squares for our contestants. Microjig also, you're familiar with the gripper and assorted accessories they provide for using power tools. SawStop has provided their new miter jig for the saw table. It's really a nice piece of equipment. And Teresa Matra, daughter of Mike DiMaggio, there you go again, and Stan and Kelly Paris, always supporters of this event over the years, and really appreciate them. Ridge Carbide has donated 3 really fine blades, so if you get a chance to win them and you have a table saw, you're in luck. If you don't have a table saw, go out and get one. So, and in-kind donors with Cincinnati Surgicals supplied a nice, really kit of fine cutting tools, scalpels, and all kinds of stuff. Roar Rocket has provided a sample pack of color veneers, which is really nice. McFeely's, they're the screw company. If you go to McFeely's, they're in the screw they don't make or sell. So we have some things from them to give away. And Home Depot's donated a power screwdriver for us. Oneida has, they have these, they're called dust deputies. You attach them to a bucket you get at Lowe's or Home Depot, and you've got a dust collection system. Really neat. And Bumbleshoots, a first-time sponsor. We have some nice wax products from them, as well as oils. We'll be giving those away. Panarouter has given a nice set of router bits. VacuPress has provided a cash sponsorship for us, which is really nice. First-time sponsor for us in Niles Bottle Stoppers. They make this incredible little thing that if you're turning, you do offset kinds of turning things, you know what they are. So. Whiteside Products has donated some router bits. Lee Valley, a couple of gift certificates. The New Hampshire Furniture Masters donated for their books, and Judith Harron has donated in kind for veneer that we sold at one of our meetings. All right, good. So again, to our entrants, thank you for your sharing your generous products that you've made. To our speakers and judges, thank you for sharing your expertise, and to all our attendees, thank you for joining us on this beautiful day. Take time later to explore the gallery, meet new members, inspired by the creativity and skills that surround you. Leah, so, I just want to say one thing first. Someone recently told me I needed to find a voice of my woodworking. If you go into any gallery displaying Leah's works, that voice screams out at you. You cannot miss it. So with that, Leah, please, could you come up and just give a few words? And I apologize.
Well, I won't scream. My name is Leah Woods. I run the woodworking and furniture design program here at UNH. Okay. And I am thrilled to be here today and to have this event here. So last year, when I came to this competition, and I was amazed to see the amount of work that was submitted, the variety of work, and the quality of all of the objects, whether functional furniture or sculpture or anything in between. And today, as I've been walking around looking at everything, again, I feel amazed to see such diversity in the objects and they're so beautiful and so well built. And I say amazed not because I have any doubt about the pool of talent that exists in our communities of woodworking and furniture design, but rather to come here and to have everybody come to this community to share their successes and share their questions and share their concerns and failures. I think most of us who are woodworkers know that woodworking is great. It's challenging, rewarding, boring, slow, exciting. And for many of us, it can be a very independent, isolated activity. And sometimes that can be great. I love to be in my studio and listen to music or talk myself through a problem, but it can also be challenging sometimes when you're sitting there and you're thinking, surely someone has figured this out before me. Or on the other end of the spectrum, I just made a really cool thing and I want to show it off. And so to be able to come here together and to share our work and to share our stories and to just be supportive to each other, I find so inspiring and rejuvenating and hopeful, especially to see such wonderful work from younger makers and students. Several of my students from UNH are here. And so I want to thank everybody who submitted work to the competition, thank everyone who came to support everybody else, and especially the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers and Elliot Savitsky for all of their time and effort putting this together. Thank you.
And finally, to guide us through today's activities and keep us on schedule, ensure the energy stays high, please welcome our Master of Ceremonies, a true friend of the Guild, and a familiar face to many of you. Let me just read some of his bio here. I think we all know him well enough. But Tom McLaughlin apprenticed in the early 90s with master craftsman Pug Moore of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and over his 30-plus year career, he's designed and built a myriad of custom pieces for clients seeking to own pieces that are much a work of art as they are functional. Tom could be seen in recent episodes hosting Classic Woodworking with Fine Woodworking on PBS TV, and he's a frequent contributor to Fine Woodworking magazine, and as a 25-year-plus member of New Hampshire Furniture Masters and former chairman, his work has become recognizable for its dramatic use of figured wood, creating a sense of movement in each piece. In 2016, Tom shifted his focus from commission work to teaching on his Epic Woodworking platform. He and his wife, Chris, created Epic Woodworking to help further the craft by providing instruction for all levels through online courses and in-shop classes at his shop in Canterbury, New Hampshire. They also offer a community membership experience called the Neighborhood, which brings together woodworkers from all over the world with the goal of expanding skills and inspiring creativity. I do have everyone's favorite woodworking influencer, Tom McLaughlin.
All right, thank you so much. I'm excited for today. Been thinking about it for a long time and really impressed by the beautiful work over there. And like many of you, I've been caught up in the current thoughts of entering the age of AI. And, you know, that question that we're all going to be asking pretty soon, or if we haven't already, is this real? Is that real? And it's great to be in a room of people, artisans, who make real stuff, right? And who are real, right? Right? Everybody's real in here. Well, it is real. It's all real. But at the same time, things aren't always what they seem to be, even events like this. I remember when I was a early furniture maker, member of the New Hampshire Furniture Masters, going to my first exhibit and bringing the piece I had made. I forget what it was probably like a chest of drawers or something like that. And I brought it into the group, and there's like 20, 25 makers, many long established. And, you know, you're walking in, you're a little, you're kind of confident because you love the thing, you spend a lot of time with it, but at the same time, you're not sure if you're going to measure up. And there's this feeling of comparison. And Theodore Roosevelt said, comparison is a thief of joy. But I went in there, into that room, and I was kind of shook, but in a good way. I remember looking at the other kind of work that these other guys, man, I was like, man, I got to up my game here. And I was looking around the room, and I was just so moved and inspired by what was there. And it's appropriate that kind of the theme of tonight's speakers is inspiration, because I had this feeling that I needed to rise to meet what was around me. It wasn't a negative kind of comparison, but it was a rising to meet. I've been reading this pretty cool book lately by some of you know Rick Rubin, the producer, called The Creative Act. And in there he tells the story of Brian Wilson, who many of you know was the lead of the Beach Boys, and he was a prolific songwriter and all that. Well, very early in the Beach Boys' career, Brian in 1965, listened to the Beatles' album Rubber Soul. I had to go back and look at that. I was like, wait, Rubber Soul? I didn't know that one. But there's a lot of great songs on there. Trust me. There's like, go look at it. And Brian was so moved by listening to that album that he said, if I do anything in my life, I'm going to make an album that good. And he went on to say, I was so happy that I went home and he began to write the song God Only Knows, which many of you know. And interestingly, when that album came out where that song was on, called Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys, Paul McCartney heard it. And now he listened to it and he said he was reduced to tears. And he said, God Only Knows was to his ears the best song ever written. And in fact, the Beatles went on and listened to that album, Pet Sounds, over and over while they were creating their masterpiece, Sgt. Pepper's. And their producer said, without Pet Sounds from the Beach Boys, Sgt. Pepper would never have happened. Sgt. Pepper was an attempt to equal Pet Sounds. It's really, this event here really isn't a competition. It's great to call it that because it stirs us all up to compete. And that thing with the Beach Boys and Beatles wasn't a competition, but it was more of a collaboration, kind of a mutual love, an upward spiral to create masterpieces in their own particular field. In this event, have any of you looking around at the furniture felt that? You know, like makers, you look around, you're like, whoa, I want to up my game. This is so much more than a competition, and I hope you feel that kind of lift if you're a maker or just an appreciator. And also, I just want to say thank you to the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers for putting in this work, and especially Elliot for spearheading this, because it's groups like that that really are important in our lives. Because if you live isolated and independent as a maker, it's not only depressing, but you're going to miss that upward spiral. So I hope you'll sense that tonight and make the most of this event and the group, the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers, or other groups that are close by to you. Well, I want to introduce a friend and associate of mine in the Furniture Masters to talk a bit about that. He began in 1997 as a framing and finish carpenter, but then he moved to finer things, and he set up his one-man furniture studio. He set it up in 2008 in Gonick, I never know how to say that, Gonick, New Hampshire. He's a member of the League of New Hampshire Crafts, the Furniture Masters. He's been a faithful chairman for the last, feels like a decade, I bet, to him. He's been featured in Fine Woodworking Magazine, New Hampshire Homes. He's won numerous awards, and he has a passion for furniture making and design, writing, and teaching. And he loves to teach, and you can catch him if you can get a spot in the class up at the Center for Furniture Craftsmanship in Rockport, Maine. I'm talking about Owain Harris. Come on up.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. I'm the third year as a judge. Thanks for having me back. I keep getting asked. I think it might be because I'm the only furniture maker Ellie knows that owns a suit, so I always look good up here, but I don't know if that's true or not. Once again, a real honor to be here, to be part of the judging process. You know, you guys always make it difficult because there's just an amazing array of work on display. You know, Elliot's always very generous in giving me a chance to come up here and let you guys know what the New Hampshire Furniture Masters are doing currently. So I just want to let you guys know about a couple of things that we have going on. This year, it's our 30th anniversary, and to celebrate that, we published a book celebrating 30 years of the organization that's got every single member and invited artist over the course of 30 years is featured in the publication, along with essays from a number of luminaries inside the craft world. So if you guys haven't seen that book yet, I recommend checking it out. It's a really nice publication. And the other thing we have going on right now is a 30th anniversary exhibition at the Curry Museum of Art in Manchester that's on display until February 8th. Some really amazing pieces there. So, and we're working on putting together a private walkthrough with members of the New Hampshire Furniture Masters for the Guild specifically. So we're trying to find a date that works for you guys, for us, and crucially is one of their free Saturdays. So you guys don't have to pay the ticket price. You can just come in and see the work and then see the rest of the museum. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be in the newsletter when we have those dates figured out. So the other thing I want to do is just introduce the other judges. It was a real pleasure working with both of these people, talking about inspiration. These are both people that I have known for a long time, and that they have both been inspiring to me. So first we have a sculptor and an artist and a wood turner and an educator. She has work in, she's a juried member of the League of Hampshire Craftsmen, and she has work in private collections and museums around the world. Donna Banfield, right here. And I saw Donna's work early on when I started sort of tuning in to see what the League work was all about, and I found her work to be actually pretty intimidating because it's so good. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I can actually do work that good, but also really inspiring. I wanted to do work that good. And the other judge we have is a good friend of mine. He's a member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen and the New Hampshire Furniture Masters. He's a furniture maker and a carver. He's got a really spectacular piece on display right now at the Curry Museum of Art. Greg Brown, back there. Yeah. And Greg and I shared, he had the bench next to mine in a shared shop for about 8 years. And when he moved into the shop, I will say that I didn't know for sure if I even wanted to be a furniture maker. And after 8 years of seeing his work and of arguing with him about the finer points and the philosophies of furniture making, when that shop broke up, I knew for a fact that I was a furniture maker. And he has a large part in playing in that. So thank you, Greg. All right, I don't know that I have anything else to say other than, again, thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
All right, we have a couple of great presentations for you. First up, he is a specialty carver, also a friend in the Furniture Masters. He works out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He's a public artist, and he's inspired primarily by Antonio Gaudi and Pablo Picasso. His work is featured in libraries, museums, hospitals, schools, and homes. And I can personally attest, I love his carvings and his work, how it actually ministers to children. It's amazing to see how playful and how much joy his work brings to all ages. But he seeks to design and relate to the environment in which the work will be seen. And his art best serves us when it's looking forward and inspirational. So appropriate to have him here. Jeff Cooper.
First, I want to thank Tom for the intro talking about the Beach Boys and the Beatles, because it really ties into exactly what I want to talk about tonight, about how two different sets of artists played ping pong with each other and took inspiration from one set of work, inspiring another set of work. And when we get to the slides I'm going to show, you'll see why that's meaningful to me. So thanks again for Tom. I actually grew up as a Beach Boys and Beatles generation. listening to Rubber Soul and Pep Boys and Summer Days and Summer Nights. Those are my go-to bands when I was young. Anyway, so the topic of my topic is when's inspiration, and sometimes looking around the room, what I see in the room here, you might think, well, why do I even need to give this talk? But I'm going to do it anyway, okay? So when I started out in woodworking, there was this big raging debate going on about is it art or is it craft? And I thought that was a rather stupid debate because the fact is that we're all on the spectrum. So it's really a question of what inspires us to do what we do, you know, that gives us where do our ideas come from. And sometimes I like to say that an artist is a person who actually sees what they're looking at. Because you can take it in, you can store it, and then when it comes time to make something, it reflects back out. Because, you know, we see things, and that's what really shapes who we are. So, you know, I'm seeing that when we're making stuff, the range in woodworking ranges from the purely art pieces to the very traditional pieces to replications, you know, and everything in between, things that are functional. And all of that stuff is represented in the room here tonight and by the people who are making stuff. I'd like to tell you a quick story that many years ago, at Peter Valley Craft Center, I took a chainsaw carving class with Michael Putney. And I wasn't really interested in chainsaw carving at the time, but it was just the class that was being offered, so I took it. And Michael, when he realized that I was serious about becoming a woodworker, advised me to develop a style of work that was recognizable as mine. And at first I rejected that advice because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to all kinds of work. But, you know, now, all these years later, you can see very quickly that I actually ended up taking that advice because I think it's very recognizable. You know, when people see things that I did, they know that it was mine. And if you go over to the show that Owen was talking about at the Courier right now, and you walk around the room, you'll be able to look and say, oh, that's David, and that's Garrett, and that's Ted, and that's Tom. You can very quickly, because all these people who've gotten to that level of mastery have developed a style that was what we call a voice. And I'll give you a confession that the person who said to Elliot, you know, find a voice, well, that was me at a jury, well, actually a critique session that we did at the League when I looked at his work, and he brought in all kinds of different pieces of all different styles, and that's what I said to him. So it's kind of cool that that meant something to him when I said that. So, you know, when you were talking about what's your voice, what is it about your body of work that makes a person say, you know, I need a dresser, I need a table or whatever, and I want you to make that table or chair or whatever, is because there's something about your work that really inspires them, that they connect with. And that's what we mean by finding your voice. And so then we get to our topic, you know, when's inspiration? And I'm going to get to some slides, don't worry. So every project begins with a blank page, and a blank page is kind of a very scary thing to look at because there's infinite possibilities, and infinite possibilities is kind of frightening. So what is it that gets us to start drawing on that page? You know, we're influenced by things that we've seen. We develop a taste for what we like. It's also sometimes a question of who it's for. If it's a commission, then, you know, there's another person involved. And for me, one of the joys of the woodworking is getting to know the client and make, you know, I always seek to make the work I do for a client an expression of the client, because it's not necessary for me to make it an expression of myself, because that's going to happen anyway. And then the other factor is, what's it to be used for? Some things we do, we make for a specific client. Sometimes we make things for sale. And sometimes we do things that are just for ourselves. I want to make something, what should I make? And that's when you have the blank page that's so scary. So what I've got to show you this evening is a series of photos that come from makers that I respect. And I don't mean to leave anybody out, but these are the folks who responded when I sent out, please send me something for this idea. And what I've done is I've paired their work with an item that they encountered somewhere in their travels, perusals, or whatever, that influenced that particular piece. So I'm hoping that when the slides come up, you'll see the connection that they made. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that there's more of my work represented in the collection of slides than other people's. That's because it's me who's giving the speech. And so there we go. Well, Tom mentioned that I'm a fan of Picasso. So the first slide the first slide I've shown here is one day I'm at the Museum of Metropolitan Art at the Primitive Art Show in New York, and I came across the ladies of the Mademoiselles d'Avignon by Picasso, and on the wall next to it was the African masks that he saw that inspired the painting. And so I've got in this slide for you one of the African masks that he used, and you can see in the lady up in the upper right that there's a very close correspondence between that mask and that painting. And so this is an example, kind of like the Beach Boys and the Beatles, where Picasso saw the African styles. Wow, how can I do something like that? Put it in the painting, and I saw it, and I immediately went home and I made this piece on the right called Man with a Staff, in which I tried to, simplify, modernize to incorporate the primitive style, the duality that was both in the masks and in the Picasso paintings, where there's a combination of a profile and a face view in the same face. And so there was a direct connection from the African mask to the painting to my creating this piece. I hope you see it. I certainly do. This is something from Tim Coleman, who was in Istanbul at the Hagia Sophia, where he saw the Arabic script and the stylistic nature of the script that you see, and there's the medallion. That's the photo Tim sent, and he came home and made this chest called Arabesque. And you can see in the script the thickness of the line, the way the lines swirl and carve as if they're coming right off the pen, and all the little trims there, and in the veneer work that he did, you can see all that variation, the twisting, the ribbon-like cutting, that for Tim came as a direct inspiration from the Arabic script. And then this is the piece that's at the Courier right now, and another study for it. These are the ring cabinet and the ring table. And you can see again in it, in the veneer work that he did, there's the variation in the thickness as if, like from a paintbrush that rolls over and flips, in the rings that are all intertwined together. So when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing that direct connection from the Arabic script that Tim saw to the way he interpreted in the Arabesque cabinet. And then this is like a next generation on. It's further removed from the original script, but there still is this thematic connection from one keeping right through to the other. This is from Lynn Skamansky, and she wrote to me, way back when I was at the Met in New York City and saw these African heddle pulleys, I sketched them in my notebook, and a few years later came upon the sketch, which eventually manifested in the tables. That's basically it. And there you can see the way the legs on the heddle pulley, and frankly, I have no idea what a heddle pulley is. Maybe Lynn does, somebody does, but it's the form and the shape of it. There was a direct connection for her in what she saw in the primitive art to the tables that she made that you see here. This came from Hank Gilpin, and he wrote, a door, a bad pick, but it did inspire the cherry cabinet with panels inverted. And this is something where the door is a very traditional door, and it isn't necessarily these, highly artistic, sculptural, or whatever pieces, because you're still taking an inspiration from what you saw into what you do. And you can see the way the rectangles are laid out, the way the squares are laid out from the door to the cabinet. And it's a way to design it, and then it's enhanced by the beautiful grains on the woods, and it all comes together, but you can see the direct connection from one to the other. This is from Michelle Halley, and she, wrote to me that she was inspired by the work of Ruhlmann, Emile Jacques Ruhlmann, his table, which you see on the left. And it's very square, but you see underneath it that disc-like understructure that she's mirrored with the understructure under her cabinets, but in her case, she enhanced it more with a wider top, the apron on it, incorporating a drawer, the beautiful veneers and things, but you can obviously see a direct connection from something that she saw to something that she did. And if you take another step from it to the table that she has right over here, as soon as I saw that table, I saw that as a next generation follow-on from this set because of the way the understory, the shelf underneath, the tapered legs, the delicate legs that make it kind of float in the air and still be strong and still have the curves and the veneer enhancement that Michelle does. And so there's, a direct line from the Ruhlmann piece to those tables to the piece you see over here on my left. So Tom mentioned my inspiration from Antonio Gaudi and my trips to Barcelona with the Sagrada Familia. And at the Sagrada, the columns, I don't have the picture of it here, but the columns are all trees. And so when I've done the chairs or these outdoor benches, I always like to make it so that it starts wide at the bottom and tapers as it goes up. So like in what you saw in Michelle's thing, the taper down to a very fine point where it hits the floor makes it kind of float. And that's a beautiful style. But for me, I'm taking from the Gaudi type things with the trees that is like rooted in the ground and it grows out of the ground. And it's just a style point that I have. But it was very much nature carvings. Gaudi put a lot of jokes into some of his architecture as well. And so you'll see that, I don't know if you can see it, but there's the iguana, which is very famous at the Parkway in Barcelona, which I've turned into 2 spotted salamanders that you can see on the bench, like on the rail on the front and then on the top. It's probably hard to see, but then I put the little animals on it. So I call this bench Affinity because it was directly inspired by the work that I saw by Gaudi in Barcelona. This came from Roger Myers, and he wrote to me, "Many of the skyscrapers on Hong Kong Island have openings of various sizes and shapes that go completely through the building known as Dragon's Gates. And their purpose was to allow the dragons to flow from the mountain to the sea unobstructed. I, meaning Roger, incorporated the openings into several pieces of furniture. One of them is called Bird's Eye View, and the other is Dragon's Gate. And I don't know which one is which, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that the openings that he saw in the architecture in Hong Kong inspired the way the openings are in these cabinets and the way he made these little alcoves and recesses for people. It's really very cool. And these pieces won some awards down at the show in Providence, Rhode Island. This is from Aspen Golan, and she wrote, I'm attaching a photo of one of my brooms alongside a snapshot I took of a tree canopy that inspired the form. The sweeping shapes and branching structures really stuck with me. There's something about the way weight and lightness interact in both that I've tried to capture in the broom's forms. And so you can see how inspired it was, that inspired by nature, I want to make an interesting artistic broom, and there we have it. Several years ago, I was in Vancouver and I encountered this sculpture, Raven and First Men by Bill Reed, and I was really struck by the clean lines of the Athabascan. He's an Athabascan artist, even though his name doesn't show it, but he is Native American. And this is an illustration of the Athabascan creation myth where the raven was opening a clamshell and the people are all falling out. but according to the myth, they were trying to get back in, not be born. Anyway, when I encountered this sculpture, I just walked around it and just spent a long time looking at it. And it really inspired me to want to do public art and to really include narrative concept in the pieces that I make. And so, encountering the sculpture was like career changing for me. And so these are two pieces from a trip to Peru that I made kind of as a reflective of what I saw in that. And they're entitled Forest Trilogy because in the Inca pantheon, that's the the condor represents the sky above, the a puma represents this life, and the serpent or the snake represents the world below. And so this is an example of, from that piece, bringing this narrative concept, a storytelling aspect to what I'm doing in these two pieces. I substituted a sloth for the puma because we saw a sloth up in the trees. When we saw it, the birds are very, it's very much stylized to me. I mean, you're seeing birds over here, which are very realistic. For me, influenced by the Athabascan artwork that I saw in Raven and First Men, is very interpretive of the bird's form, the serpent's form, or the animal's form, rather than trying to do lifelike, and that's kind of my influence from the primitive art. So the other artist that really influenced me was Brancusi for the cleanness of line. The one on the very left is called The Cock, and I'm not sure the titles of the other. And the one on the right is something I made that I think reflects my influence from Brancusi. It's called Conversation or Not, my first political commentary in an art piece, whereas it has two pieces of wood carved, just looking for the general shapes and the smoothness, the simplified line, but the two pieces kind of interacting, but not really facing each other. So, that's an influence from the Brancusi style for me. This is a piece that very much reflected a client who had just been on a trip to Botswana, and the paper on the screen was made by Angie Follansby. I think if you look at the leopard that's lying on the table there, you very much see that Brancusi influence I was talking about before. But in terms of being a very narrative piece, you're talking about the interaction, between the leaves and all that, is kind of derives from all the other stuff I've been talking about. This is from Greg Brown, and he wrote, "The Alden rocker. My grandfather was the most important person in my life as a child. He introduced me to fishing. I still use his fishing net to this day, and attached, I used the shape of the net from a rocker's side profile while trying to make the frame flow like water. I also knotted a woven seat out of the braided Kevlar fishing fear line to simulate the net." So I think for me, it's really cool to see the form and the joinery and everything that you see in the fishing net translated into a rocker. And wow, I mean, like, this is a perfect example of the point I'm trying to make with this whole talk about how a fishing net could inspire a rocker as a memorial to his grandfather. Is just a very cool thing. And these are some details from that rocker. So this is a spider bed that, again, is a very narrative piece. The client in this case called me up one day and said, "Can you make a bed with a spider theme?" And of course I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And then I scratched my head and said, "Oh my God." So I went up and I visited him at his property up in Moultonborough on the lake. And he gave me a tour of the property, and I saw this big stone arched, front gate, this stairway going up to the main building. And then he gets very excited. He wants to show me the beaver dam that he and his sister portaged their canoe over. And we went traipsing all around the countryside, trespassing on somebody's property. We found the beaver dam that was just so run down and worn out, it was hardly existing. And he was just so happy. And I realized that the piece was about a tribute to his love for the property. And the next slide shows the further inspiration for me, that on the right, you're seeing Daphnis and Chloe from Chagall's painting on the ceiling of the Paris Opera House, and how I've taken and translated that idea into the crest on top of the headboard, because it was about partly about his love for his wife as well as the love for the property. And it was just seemed to have this couple floating above the bed, inspired very much by the Chagall work with that mystical floating sense. To me, it was just really cool. And so I put that in the headboard, and it's really cool. So David Lamb wrote, "Frost and black ice. It's all based on the observation of ice formations on glass, metal roofs and puddles and ponds, and the similarity in structure of the crotch wood grain and the crystal forms, that being feathery and fern-like. The repetitive nature of designs are called fractals. So in my human nature, trying to reflect upon and mimic nature, I've developed my own interpretation of fractal composition with wood, trying to get a solid material to read as transparent or semi-transparent." And so I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of these pieces he's done with the crotch veneer, all inspired by Jack Frost on the window. And that's just such a very cool connection. And here's, two more examples. All of this stuff is at the Currier Museum. You can see it right now. And, it's just to be looking out the window, seeing the frost on the window, and from there going to make this wonderful design technique and pattern is just, it's wonderful. And so this is my last slide. I was on a trip to southern France in Provence, and we went to Aix-en-Provence, where I saw this sculpture on the left by a woman named Ruth Bloch. And just before that, I had been at the Currier, and I had seen the table on the right by Judy McKee. And somehow in my mind, those two things kind of merged and came out with the piece that you see in the middle, which I call rencontre, because it's like a chance meeting between two people. And to give it a narrative quality, I have them like they're sitting on a wall, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little letter inscribed as if one of them is sliding a letter back, and, kind of a pickup line. And, so I think, it's really interesting on this slide, to see these two pieces that I saw in completely different places kind of merge and become one piece that I made. So, getting back to what I was saying about pieces made for ourselves or for a client, or pieces for sale, the commission pieces are made with a destination in mind, which is where they're going to go. But there's an overlap between the pieces we make for ourselves and those we make for sale, because in some ways we're making it for ourselves as personal expression, and we still want to sell it. And so I think that's something I would very much encourage, to not, draw such a line, because when you're making something for sale, it is still your personal expression. So I would call your attention back to Forrest's trilogy, The Lamp, which I made for myself as a remembrance of our trip to Peru, but I very much wanted to sell it, except that it was so personal to me that nobody bought it. And now it's in my house, and very happily so. Whereas on Rencontre, the one that's still on the screen, was also a member of a trip to Provence, but I had a customer just for a simple repair of a piece of furniture, And she came into my shop and there was a blanket over it. And she says, "What's that?" And I took the blanket off and said, "Oh, this is this piece I made." And she looked at it and says, "I'll buy it." So I guess the point that I'm making here with those two examples is to follow your muse and things will work out very nicely. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jeff. That was inspiring. Our next speaker is the author of two books you may have seen around. One is The Why and How of Woodworking, and the other is Foundations of Woodworking. You might better know him as editor and creative director of Fine Woodworking magazine, where he's been for over 25 years. The look and feel of that magazine these days is due to this next speaker. I think he's best known, though, for his guest spot on classic woodworking. He didn't write that on his bio. I don't know what it is. But anyway, he has a focus on making the craft easier for those of us that struggle day to day in our shops. Anyone do that? But I think what's most admirable with all of these high traits, Mike has a passion for teaching in person, one-on-one with students, and really getting into handling and teaching use of tools. And he does amazing work. Mike Pekovich, come on.
Thanks very much for having me. Seeing all this work here, I'm equal parts inspired, humbled, energized, and a bit envious of the woodworking community you have here. And there's so many people doing awesome work and so many people on different positions on the arc of their experience. And I think that all of that informs the work that we do. So when I'm asked to talk, it's like, are you asking me to talk because I'm an editor, or because I wrote a book, or because I make furniture, or because I teach? It turns out I always thought I wore a lot of hats, and most of those hats got in the way of my true passion, which was just getting into my shop and making something. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. In fact, one of my favorite pieces over here, I was so glad to hear described as an in-between project. I think that describes almost everything that I make. So I thought I would show you a couple pieces of my work, give you some insights into why it looks the way it does, and then offer some ideas about how I go about these days making something that hopefully resembles the idea I had when I started. I think that's always been a somewhat challenging thing. I went to art school in Southern California, and I somehow ended up in the furniture making program. It just made more sense to me. And one of the highlights of the year was taking a field trip to the Gamble House in Pasadena. This was designed by Green and Green, who were brother architects who not only designed the exterior of these beautiful kind of grand California bungalows, but also the furniture that inhabited the homes as well. And I was tremendously inspired by this. It didn't look old to me. I wasn't really aware of what arts and crafts furniture was as a aspiring furniture maker in college. I didn't really have patience for old brown furniture, but this just felt new and fresh to me. And it really instilled this notion that a piece of furniture doesn't exist in a vacuum, that it is informed by the space which houses it, and it also informs the space that we put it in. So that interconnection between what we're making, where it lives, and how it impacts that space, and either in a jarring way or in a subtle way enhancing that kind of soundtrack to that space. A huge influence in college was the work of James Krenov, the writings of James Krenov. He was the poet laureate of 20th century furniture makers. I was inspired not just by his words, but also by his furniture as well. His case on stand form was his muse. He'd made many of these, all in various proportions, various woods, and everything was a study in different aspects of building. But the thing I learned uh, from Krenov was this notion that who we are and what we make um, go together, are informed by the other. There should be a connection. That can be a little bit scary if we're not really happy with the people we are at the time we're making something. But I think ultimately that's a point I've been trying to get to in my life with the work that I make. Another huge influence in college was stumbling on a book on Japanese joinery. And it really instilled this notion that the things that give a piece strength, the structure of a piece, also adds to the beauty of the piece. This notion that the bones of a piece are also its ornamentation. The ornamentation isn't applied after the fact. Okay, it sounded like it was feeding back a little bit. Is it? Okay, how are we doing here? Okay, so the work I made in college was fairly architectural, very much joinery forward, and I would say from a design standpoint, I would call it overt, meaning this is a piece of furniture, and this call for attention, for legitimacy, for staking our flag in the sand at that point in our lives when we're still trying to figure out what that's all about. But very much the structure of a piece, having fun just playing with how are pieces going to hold together? How do they fit? Other than this being described as a diving board after the fact, which was a bit depressing. All the dark wood for the base and the support structures, that was all Bolivian rosewood, 8-quarter stock back when it was actually legal to buy at the time. And unfortunately, I don't own that piece because that would have turned into hundreds of drawer pulls by this point. My next education in woodworking came when I came to Fine Woodworking magazine. I had spent some time, very short time, making furniture in college, got interested in music, was goofing around in a band in my 20s when I decided I needed to get serious about getting a real job and starting a family. I went back to school for graphic design. Did that for a couple years and got just enough experience to get me in the door at Fine Woodworking as an associate art director. And at the time, the job requirement was someone who knew computer graphics and woodworking. And it was right at the cusp, pre-computer, to where I was literally the only person with those two qualifications. So I got that job and I have not let go of that job. And in addition to, the whole idea was that somehow this was leaning towards me becoming a better woodworker while getting paid to do a different job concurrently. And the people who wrote for the magazine really became my mentors and inspiration and still continue to be to this day. People like Garrett Hack, Chris Bexford, Michael Fortune, Steve Latta, Phil Lowe, Roland Johnson, Charlie Durfee, stuff that Owen's doing, stuff that Tom's doing. I never cease to be amazed, inspired, and renewed by the work being done by people in this craft. This was a huge turning point in my furniture making. This was a little 6-inch tall vase with a chipped rim that I found at a flea market. This is a vase made by Rookwood, part of the arts and crafts pottery movement. I didn't know that at the time. Something just resonated with me about it. I liked it. It was chunky. I loved the glaze. I love that incised design. Later, I come to find out that it was part of the American arts and crafts movement, and I went to an antique gallery and saw Stickley furniture. Number one, I didn't have the money to buy that. Number two, I could look at it and see how it was made, and I can make this. I think that's something that attracts a lot of us to arts and crafts furniture is that its bones are on display. We can look at it, understand how it's constructed, and again, it speaks to the heart of that notion of that skeleton is the defining characteristic of the look of the piece. So I made a number of arts and crafts pieces for a while, and moving to Connecticut to work at Fine Woodworking magazine, I had been aware of Shaker furniture, had an appreciation for it, but it was sort of distilled down to the pieces for sale in the Shaker Workshop's catalogs. I thought that's what Shaker furniture was. And I took a visit to Hancock Shaker Village in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. If you haven't been there, I recommend it. It really gave me a holistic notion of how the furniture interacted with the architecture, interacted with the landscape, interacted with the philosophy of keeping things very spare intentionally, no added ornamentation. And so all those things, again, sort of layered. They weren't new ideas, they just reinforced ideas that had been percolating through my work. There's a piece of chocolate in that drawer, which is how I got my daughter to stand still for that. This was a first piece that I had written an article on for Fine Woodworking magazine. I'd been there for about 6 years. It took me 6 months to get the courage up to go into the Fine Woodworking shop and actually make something there. And in this piece, really it was a distillation of a lot of tips and techniques I'd learned from the magazine over dozens of years, going back to back issues and dozens of makers. So I felt all I was doing was really just curating best practice and good information. This was another piece that spoke to this nature that I think is somewhat a subversive aspect of Shaker furniture, and in that while they avoided any intentional ornamentation, I felt through their asymmetry, which was based on functionality, I felt there was a rather subversive sense of creativity in their work. So that notion of asymmetry, along with keeping things super clean and simple, was a big inspiration. At Fine Woodworking, for better or for worse, there's a bit of a rite of passage where you had to try your hand at a fancy piece of furniture, because if you weren't making a Queen Anne piece, you weren't really stepping up to the plate. So this was a piece that was based on a Phil Lowe piece he had done for the magazine. And I really enjoyed the process. It was really fun. I have a true appreciation for the style and the level of technique and craftsmanship that goes into executing it. It didn't really fit my aesthetic, so I made my brother buy this and put it in his house, and that's where it lives happily today. So I think for furniture sales, coercion is a good thing if you can work that in. What I really loved about this piece was that cabriole leg form was just such a gorgeous, ingenious thing with that corner post, the knee, the ankle, and the foot. And I carried that in the back of my mind for a long time. And it finally kind of evidenced itself in a very subtle form and otherwise small shaker table. Where it was still incorporating that corner post, the knee, very subtle ankle and foot, and just introducing those very subtle curves that began to inspire other curves throughout the piece. There's very subtle curves on the lower apron. There's a curve on the under bevel of the tabletop, and then those curves began to inform other pieces as well. And it's a really good example of how my evolution as a designer or maker is incredibly slow, sometimes frustratingly so, but I have a tendency to repeat myself with the things I make. I have a tendency to limit the changes in my work as much as I want to push them forward. I'm equally holding back. This is my shop. So I was in Connecticut for quite a while. In California, everybody has their shop in their garage. Why not? You open the doors, there's a lot of space. You move to Connecticut, it's November. You understand why nobody has a wood shop in their garage. So I worked in the fine woodworking shop for many years until I got this updated, insulated, got some doors, got some heat in there. Getting into my own shop, I didn't realize it at the time until I got there, that having a private place to work made me realize how much the things I made were being filtered through the sensibilities of Fine Woodworking Magazine, what was proper, what was best practice, what was good design. And while I think that that's tremendously informative, I think it speaks to the notion of the more we are holding ourselves to conventional standards in the work we make, sometimes that's keeping us from moving forward with our own personal expression. So didn't really know what to do with that. One more very, very influential piece. This was a big milestone in my work. I'd been doing a lot of commission work, that was Shaker-ish, Federal-ish, arts and crafts-ish, walnut, cherry, kind of contemporary, kind of Pottery Barn, but hopefully a step up from that. So when I had put a bunch of photos together to put an online portfolio together, I wasn't disappointed in any of those pieces, but nothing really spoke directly to my passion as a furniture maker and what I wanted to be making. This piece was a piece, it was made without thought, without consideration. We were doing an article on hanging up wall cabinets, and we needed an example of something that needed a French cleat. So I jumped on that because that meant we can go to the shop and do woodworking during work hours and get paid for it. So this little piece, it was nothing more, some dovetails, mortise and tenons, some spalted wood scraps as drawer fronts, but something really resonated to it. This thing spoke more to, I think, what I had in mind than anything else. So I like that idea of not working in a style, limiting myself to a very small number of variables through joinery, tenons, dovetails. You can add a door and a drawer, but that's it. Those are the variables you can work with. See what you can do with just those things. And one thing that isn't readily apparent is that a lot of my work tends to be simplified down to, Mike, why do your dovetails stick out? And that's true. The dovetails stick out, the tenons stick out. More than that, wherever two surfaces meet, there's an offset. So the sides are inset from the top and bottom. The shelf is inset from the sides. The drawer dividers inset from the shelf. The drawers are inset from the divider, the doors are inset, the rails are inset from the stile. So in an otherwise really austere piece, to me, those offsets create a series of highlights and shadows, which just bring it to life in a really quiet way. I like those two things, something that isn't silent, but then something that doesn't really shout either. And that really stemmed from the piece I made for my daughter, where the top had the through dovetails at the top, and it was perfect in that I planed it flush and sanded it, and you couldn't feel them. And then after the first heating season in Connecticut, you run your fingers across the top and you feel these ridges, and it's not perfect anymore. It's not new anymore. So, somehow we're tied to the notion of making something that is meant to last for 200 years. Great, but what's the point of making something and having it be old for 199 years? So it brought to mind this notion that rather than begrudge the effects of time and what age is going to do to a piece, understand it, anticipate it, and embrace it. So rather than starting with fluff dovetails, have the pin stick out a little bit, because if the wood moves a little, they're still going to be proud a month from now, 5 years from now, 50 years from now. Where two surfaces are perfectly flush, where door frames are perfectly flush when it's new, they're not so flush 5 months, 5 years later. So again, it's this notion of embracing time, the patina of age, and changing the mindset, getting rid of the notion that new equals perfect, and that instead a piece grows into itself over time and through use. And I really like that notion. So not every piece I see or I admire or am influenced by follows this direct philosophy, but it is an example of how having a driving philosophy, whether it was the egalitarian nature of arts and crafts furniture, whether it was a lack of worldly ornamentation in shaker furniture, can drive all of those decisions that go into making a piece of furniture. And for me, it created a consistency, it created a vocabulary, and a lot of the pieces are just basically, it's another cabinet, but it's upside down on the floor with a cat. So now it's a bookcase. Take the bottom off and it's a bench. So again, it's just playing with the same very limited set of variables. I like constraints. I think that's why I'm a woodworker rather than a painter. You talked about the scariness of the white canvas and its infinite possibility. I respect that very much. And I like working on a woodworking magazine because the constraint of communicating information in a really concise way works into my brain. Another very important piece for me, this is a sewing table I had made for my wife. She wanted something, I wasn't supposed to say this, but she wanted a small table she could put in front of the TV so she could sew and watch TV at the same time. And for me, this was another one of those projects that was getting in the way of those important pieces that I really wanted to be doing. So I wanted this to be 4 legs, 4 aprons at the top, get it out of the way, and then get to that more important stuff. The problem is I felt that I always had a lot of pieces between myself and those brand pieces. And a co-worker, good friend of mine, John Tetro, who's the art director at the magazine now, he was always making fun stuff. Everything he made was inventive and creative. Even a toilet paper holder, he made it out of a boulder and steam bent wood. It was just like, so I took a cue from John and I said, what if I make this project one of those thoughtful projects? Instead of this being a stumbling block to doing the things I want to be doing, just make this what you want to be doing. So it was still a weekend project, quick bandsaw work, and but just a little bit of thought and effort just transformed it into a little bit more thoughtful piece. It turned it into a very small stepping stone forward. And I don't think we automatically move forward with every piece we make. But I think if we invest some mindfulness and intent and trying to do as good as we can, giving ourselves a break and moving forward, those pieces can move us forward. So a cutting board and candlestick set for a wedding present consisted of 2 halves that were joined together with a sliding dovetail pinned at the center. Goofing around with wrapped cord as a handle, investigating different textures and media. And then those very small influences begin to inform themselves in previous pieces. So it's the same table form, but now the side rails are wrapped handles. The top is consisted of halves that attach to the rails and dovetailed keys, pinned to a center spline. And a lot of the details in my work are responses to design challenges or things that just don't look good. On this long sliding door, the shape of the door was really horizontal and blocky, and it just didn't look good. So the notion of introducing these vertical muntins to break up that single wide element into multiple vertical elements is something that once I said, oh, that worked there, I tended to use that more and more on multiple pieces. And then I came across from our back cover, John Reed Fox, furniture maker in Massachusetts. He had a piece on our back cover that had this kumiko, it's a Japanese lattice work on the door panels, and it looked really cool. It took me a couple of years to even try it. I didn't know if I can do it, and if I could do it, I didn't know how long it would take to do it. It turned out to be pretty simple. The other thing about it is it's a very kind of graphic, lacy look. My work tends to be, I wouldn't say heavy-handed, but maybe a little elemental. Um, and I didn't think the two would go together, but it was in my own shop. Nobody was going to see it. I gave it a try. Turned out to be a really fun technique, and I also felt that the Kumiko added a nice sort of graphic counterpoint to the overall, quiet nature of the rest of my work. So that ended up showing up in a lot of my work, along with the wrapped handles, um, mirrors. And the one instance where I didn't try to constrain that graphic pop of the Kumiko was in a stereo console I had made for my daughter. I guess she tends to get a lot of furniture. She, and so, she bought one of those stupid suitcase record players and said, "Dad, vinyl sucks. What are you talking about?" So I said, "Let me build you a stereo console, of course." So in this case, the Kumiko is a speaker grill. There is a turntable in there. There's also a Bluetooth receiver, and most of the time, she just plays music off of her phone, but it's still. And so with all of those pieces coming together, this was a piece that it really, I almost gave up on it multiple times because none of the elements were fresh or new. I didn't feel like there was anything moving forward. And I thought, this is just a waste of time. I could be doing something original as I make this. And sort of in hindsight, once I did make it and I live with it, it's really just an accumulation of all of those, that philosophy of things sticking out, the Kumiko, the rope handles, just trying to keep things very quiet and constrained. Ended up creating something while I didn't necessarily appreciate it while making it because it wasn't exciting. In the end, it just kind of fits. So while designing can be about creative genius, and we just saw an excellent display of a lot of makers who I admire, who are truly creative geniuses, I think design doesn't have to be. And for me, and when I teach design, it's really about this notion of a step-by-step process in that it's not necessarily about this genius coming down from the ether and being bestowed on us. The idea that these ideas are coming from without and somehow we're receiving them. I think a lot of ways design is just about working towards ideas that we can see, working towards work that fits who you are. I think that still goes all the way back to that Krenov idea. So if I start there, that's cool. I have dozens of notebooks with dozens and dozens of pages just like this, of little inch square drawings of furniture. I had gotten sick, was in bed with the flu for a few days, years back, couldn't get out to my shop, which was frustrating. I had a notebook on my nightstand with a pen, and I just started drawing little pieces of furniture. And when I was done, I looked back, and it was just like, wow, look at all these designs. And then I was struck by the notion that I just designed more furniture than I'm ever going to have time to build. Which was kind of frustrating until I looked inside. Yeah, but I don't want to build all of these things. So like a lot of us who are working part-time around everything else going on in our lives, sometimes I just want to go out and make something. And that first idea, let me think of something to make. Oh, I'll make that. So I'll jump in, I start building, I get halfway through the project and I start to lose steam. It's like, really, what am I making? Is this worthy of the time and effort that I'm investing? So instead, I do a lot of these drawings, and then I come back and I look at pages, and there may be one or two things that spark an idea, so I'll redraw that idea multiple times. So the notion now is when I go out to make something, I'm making something based on looking at a dozen or 50 little drawings of furniture. And I tend to be more excited about what I'm making. And the big challenge then is, okay, here's a little chicken scratch. It gives you a spark of an idea, but how are we turning that into a real piece of furniture? So I will do scale drawings, usually on the computer, but I make students do it on graph paper. Little sketches, 1 to 8 drawings, and then using those, getting out some foam core and hot melt glue and markers and paper, and coming up with scale model mock-ups. This is a mock-up a little bit more involved because this was a design for a client. They wanted a console for their television, so I had just looked at the dimensions of the TV online, made a little mock-up TV, drew in all of the joinery, but it really kind of gives you a sense of how this is going to look in space. The next step is to go to full-size mock-ups, and this can sound really terrible. It sounded really terrible to me for a long time, in that really I want to make furniture. I don't want to make fake furniture before I make real furniture, but I found this is a huge, huge development in the work I make. It could just be a partial mock-up of a joint that was rather complex. It could be a full-scale mock-up. And I think the best advice I can give anyone who's looking to do their own work, give yourself a chance to see what you're making before you see it. We spend 6 months making a piece. We get in the house, we look at it. You got to kind of tilt your head. Wow, that's kind of not what I anticipated, but I thought that I just always had to get used to my furniture before I liked it. Like for years and years. Really, what had happened was that at the beginning of the build, I had an idea of what I wanted this to be, and I just ascribed dimensions to what I thought that would be. And then obviously you get it, it may look good in the shop, and then you bring it in the house, it's like, whoa, okay. So this notion of give yourself a chance to see what you're making. This is just a piece made from 1/4-inch plywood, butcher paper, marker. Those are my kids' little wooden blocks I stuck underneath because it was a little bit low. Get something in place where it's going to live, and then forget about it. Don't look at it too long until it looks right. Just forget about it. When you come into the room, pay attention to your first thought when you see it. Too tall, too wide, too deep, too narrow, make those changes. And then who cares if it makes it worse? That's okay. Just go to that intuition, keep ignoring it, keep living with it until it matches what you have in your mind. And then by the time the finished piece is done, for me, a well-designed piece of furniture is one that just resembles that spark of an idea I had. And it's this notion of building with intent and designing with intent. If we can't hit the target we're aiming for, we can't change the location of our target. So if we're always kind of missing everything, I don't think that we can move forward with our work. It can be a little bit more workmanlike in doing a deep tool cabinet, really trying to figure out how the tools were going to live, the angle of the tool well, what was happening below it, what was happening above the tool well. All of that gave me the information so that when I actually made it, all of my tools actually fit in place, which was, I think, a very practical thing. And it really speaks to another, I think, really, really important notion of design, in that we talked about the difference between art and craft. And one way I define that is that craft has a job to do. The things, functional objects need to function. Art is self-justifying. And can a piece be artistic and beautiful and conceptual? Absolutely. But I think a chair, a beautiful chair that breaks when you sit on it is a bad chair. A chair which is super sturdy but uncomfortable, it's a bad chair. So a chair which is beautiful to look at, sturdy, and pleasant to use, like the Tom McLaughlin chair, dining chair in the back, that's a good chair. So this notion that it needs to fit that function. Something like a wall-mounted bookshelf, it really depended on the scale of the books, and it was hard to build this thing without doing a quick mock-up, getting some books in the shop, and making sure that everything was going to fit. So by the time I was making the piece, I wasn't worried about whether or not it was the right size or not, because we have plenty of things to worry about other than that kind of stuff. A mock-up for a table can just be a front and a side, and I like the through joinery, so all double stick tape, little dots and dashes to indicate pins and tenons, and then I'll just make story sticks based on that, which then I'll use to make the actual piece. A full-size mock-up can be anything. I love found objects. When I have a piece in mind, like that chimney cupboard I made, I didn't know what the scale of the piece needed to be, how it lived in space. So I looked at everything, packing crates, water coolers, file cabinets, anything to look at and say too short, too wide, too tall, too deep. And it's this notion of, how do you even know that's not right? Like when you don't even know the dimensions of the piece you're wanting to make. So I think it's this notion of give yourself credit. If you have an idea, you may not be able to quantify it, but sometimes it's easier to define something we want to make by knowing what it's not. So in this case, it was a crosscut sled on my outfeed table with a stick to indicate my first cabinet on stand, kind of revisiting Krenov 30 years later. And it just was close enough, and it said, obviously I wasn't worried about the depth, but it was a little wide, a little bit tall. It just got me started in that direction. So I ended up making the base, and the top is still mocked up with the MDF and working on what was going on in the door. So again, and when the final piece came around, it just felt familiar. And I think if I can do nothing more than end up with a piece and say, ah, there it is. That's what I meant. Was it a good thing? I don't know. But if I don't like it, I know I can change direction. Sometimes a mock-up is a little bit more involved. This is a piece, I had a client who wanted a case on stand. They had the measurements of the space it was going to fit. They even had the measurements of the piece that they wanted because they read my book on design and they did everything and said, okay, this is how big it's got to be. And I said, that's way too big. They said, no, this is perfect. So I made them a mock-up and I sent it. I made them live with it in their house. And to me, see, I told you this is too big. And they looked at it and said, this is perfect. So I made it smaller anyway. And they haven't complained, and I feel much better about it. Another mock-up introducing, working with the same variables and then introducing something new. In this case, it was a splayed leg base. So it was really important to get the overall kind of proportions of the base, the amount of splay. That was just curtain rod stock from Home Depot, MDF case. And so the final piece, it just sits. And that was, I was trying to figure out how to attach a round leg at an angle to an apron at a front to back splay. I wasn't worried about the amount of splay or the size of the base or the length of the legs. So something, Tim Coleman, huge inspiration on so many levels. He wrote an article for us basically saying that design doesn't stop when you start building. I love that. It doesn't mean start building before you know what the design is. It means sometimes you can only get so far towards your target until you really start working on the piece. So had a case on stand, a little bit different, had these arch sled feet. I kind of like that. So I built the feet in such a way that it gave me a chance to kind of play around with different shapes by masking out those shapes a little bit. So the legs are super square and blocky. Kind of started with a very overt, big old arch because it's got to be arched, and then it turned out to be a very subtle arch. If you look really close, there's an arch. But so it's like pushing forward and pulling back until we end up with something that just sits right. And so it was a piece where I think it's fairly simple in form, but to get the tapers of the legs right, the weight of the legs, the arch of the feet, the arch of that lower rail, the arch of the side rails, the arch of that rail underneath the wide rail, all that stuff I just needed to work towards as I was building it. Another piece, I was goofing around with this It started out to be like a really wide horizontal stretcher, and I made it really narrow, and then it was too narrow, so I thought about this arch, which I made in MDF with a cardboard connecting the two to indicate a wrap, and that turned out to be kind of a cool detail, but it would have been really hard to just jump right in. John Benson, who works at the magazine, he curates our back covers, and he has done a number of interviews, slideshows with the makers on the back covers. I was going through all of those interviews. If you're a member of findwoodworking.com, you can access all of those. Tremendously inspiring, but there was a recurring theme to all these really accomplished makers doing wonderful work, and it was this notion of play. They all talked about play and having fun. When you look at their work, like a Tim Coleman piece, and it's so designed, it feels like, wow, just this weight of intellect weighing down on this, but everyone spoke of play. So I have a number of these rectangular boxes with dovetails left over from doing dovetail demos, and they just hang around. One of them ended up on a board that suggested a live edge board, which suggested maybe a little tea cabinet with a teapot to sit on the shelf. So I got some cardboard for the case front and some teapot and cups from the house to see how that was fitting. And so by the time it kind of came together, while it was a new and novel form, it was a really obvious thing to make. And I think that I know when I'm on the right track with something is it just seems really obvious. Like, well, how could you not make that? And when I'm in that zone and I'm working towards something I see in my head, I tend to be happier with the work. If I find myself halfway through a project, if you find yourself, okay, I'm figuring out a drawer pull. Is this pull better or is this better? And if you can't decide, it probably means you don't have a super clear idea in your mind of what you're aiming for. And if I have an idea of what I'm aiming for, then it's not, is this better, but which one of these things is leading me towards my goal? Which one is leading me further away? And it just helps drive a lot of those seemingly random decisions towards making things. A huge inspiration is flea market finds. It's an old arts and crafts rocker. It was kind of a no-name company. A lot of the elements in the piece were undersized as a concession to making this at a certain price point 100 years ago. But I really liked it. It was super comfortable. And my first thought was, I'm going to make a rocking chair. I'm going to base the ergonomics on this piece because it's really comfortable. I expected to do something modern, something different, something significant. I think what I ended up doing was just channeling that original design and fixing everything that was wrong with it and hopefully getting closer to what was intended when that first started out. Another flea market piece, a little bill cubby, sole reason for my fiscal solvency in the last 30 years. I loved it. I loved the functionality of it. I love the thinness of the parts and not really trying to change it at all, but just introducing my own vocabulary. Naturally, how would you make it? Well, it's got to be dovetails that stick out, and I really like the thin stock. So a lot of the work is just kind of solved through the laziness of adhering to a consistent philosophy while you build. Here's some ideas that may or may not work for you if you're designing your own work. Take a risk. This notion of sometimes we get stuck with the notion of building something real. Does it look like something that you could buy in a store? Someone comes over and says, that's great, looks like you could buy it in a store. The first thing you think of is like, no, it's handmade. And your second thought is, really? It looks like real, like you could buy it. So this notion of holding ourselves to these unrealistic or these expectations that really hold us back from doing something original. We're making something out of scratch. It may as well contain a little bit of our passions and our taste, whether that's high or low. Again, learn all the rules, learn the conventions. Great article by Garrett Hack about using contrast in woods in a piece and it's like low contrast over big areas, big contrast for small things, but then you want to make a bathroom vanity out of 17 different tropical hardwoods, just do it. Don't just do it. So break the rules. Everyone asks in a design class, what about the golden rectangle? What about the Fibonacci series? There's a lot of mathematical proportioning systems that I think we look to in order, again, to do correctly designed work. All of those things are designed to create something that looks good to your eye. I think it's far better to trust your eye. Learn to develop your eye, what looks good, what doesn't look good, and go with that. I think the worst thing you can do is put your own confidence in yourself away, build everything by this set of numbers. When you're done, you say, this is well designed because the numbers add up. And then you look at it, I don't really like it, but I guess I just don't know what good design looks like. So there are some of those things. There's a good book, number of good books available if you want to go that way, but just learn to listen to what you like and don't like. Try your best. Look at what you make with a clear eye. The only way we're going to move forward is to really consider what we've made and how successful is it in terms of hitting our target, or how appropriate was the target that we were aiming for, and then give yourself a break. You know, the only way to get to the next project is to build the one we're making. The only way to get to the next dovetail joint is finish this dovetail corner. The next one's going to be better. So it's just a slow moving forward, not automatically, but if we invest intent and effort into every piece, that is a step forward. And I think that's all we can expect from our work, is to, while our next piece will be informed by this piece, as we make, we ourselves as makers are changed as well. So our notion of what perfect is for the next piece may not match this. So I think that's this symbiotic relationship to the things that are made versus the person that makes them. And as we evolve and change, our pieces just change with it. Very much what you're talking about, this notion of designing for your client, whether it's a friend, family member, kid, grandkid. Commission work was really stressful because it was like, okay, they approved this design. I kind of want to change it. Did it change enough to get their approval on that? It was this very outward focused thing. And I didn't like commission work because it was so divorced from what I wanted to be making. And as I began to get better at things, as I began to find my own personal voice in what I'm doing, I don't think it's right to just make something just because I like it and not worry about what the person who's getting at what their feelings might be. I also don't think it's good just to build with this person's ideas in mind. I think the fact that we're making a functional object, something that someone is going to interact with, it offers an opportunity to impact their lives in a small way, but I think a really important way. And I think that combination of including my passions, my outlook, with a thought for who it's going for. And I tend to listen less and less to what someone says they want, because usually it's limited by a very narrow palette of what they've seen. But I think if you can really get to who this person is and build for what you know they're going to like, that sounds a little scary, but in a way, it's much more fulfilling, and I think you end up with something closer to what they want than what they said they wanted. Doesn't always work. Doesn't always work. It has not worked on some occasions. It's a good idea. I like that idea. So that's it. So I think it's design in a small d. Make things that match the person you are, your passions as a maker, your sense of ability, your sense of taste. and then, really get to a deeper understanding of the people who want things from you. And that's what keeps me excited about going into my shop every day. Thank you.
All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with school kids first, the younger groups, the elementary school students. And we have different levels in a number of these categories, and I'll announce those as we get to them. So in the student elementary school, we have a first, second, third, and 3 honorable mentions. Are you seeing the slide? Are we going to see those? Oh, I do. I knew that. All right. Well, there you go. That makes perfect sense. I was wondering how you're going to coordinate that. All right. All right. So the prizes are really excellent. We've got a lot from Vintage Tool Shop. Yes, thank you so much. They look like great tools too. I gotta talk to you. The number 3 planes, the low angle block planes, and the number 4 bench planes, moving left to right, first through second. So the first place winner for the elementary school, let me slide this over here, is Connor from Gathering Water School. This is just the first name. Connor. Good job. Golf clap. Thank you. Second place is Simeon Sokup. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sukup. Very nice. And third is William Schultz. Nice. And as honorable mentions, we have Cole McManus. You don't have to have your golf clap that vigorous. You can go a little lighter if you like. It'll be kind of amusing and we'll have more fun. All right, the next honorable mention is Riley. Oh, somebody's clicking? Oh, who's doing that for me? Okay, thank you. I totally spaced out about that. All right, let's move on. I'll start doing it. And the last honorable mention in that group for the vintage tool plane is Emma P. Nice cutting boards. All right, now we have the middle school students, and they're gonna win a Lee Nielsen low block plane for the first place. Ooh. And more great hand planes from Vintage Tool Shop, the number 3 bench plane and number 6. And the first place winner is Samuel Sukup. Great little carving. The second place winner is Jesse Fernandez. Third place is Louisa S. Beautiful. And the honorable mention is Sophia P. And that takes us to our high school students. Now we're moving up to a beautiful Lee Nielsen dovetail saw for first place, the Vintage Tool workbench with drawers, and a $150 gift card from Bits and Bits. You'll have to check out their website. It's really, guess what they have? Bits and other things too. But the first place winner is Parker Dorr. Second place is Fletcher Bowden. And third place is Timothy Cooper. All right, for students at the college level, We again have another beautiful prize from Lee Nielsen, the 3 chisels. And then in second place, a vintage tool shop number 7, Stanley Plain. And in third place is a $150 gift card from Bits and Bits. The first place winner in the college level is Gabriella Crinigan. The second place winner, Nora Appleby. And in third place is Robert Geyer. Congratulations. All right, we want to pause for a second here and remember our Wood Lovers Wax sponsor. This is the Next Generation of Makers Award. We thank you very much for sponsoring this. And notice it says established 2025. So we're going to look back on that date someday. But this award is for $350. Just $350, not a gift card. This is $350. And the winner of the Wood Lovers Next Generation Makers Award is Parker Door. All right, now for the emerging makers for category for best original design, we have the 3 prizes. Again, a great gift card, $350 from Bits and Bits, a $250 for the second, and a Ridge Carbide super combination flat top grind. Saw blade, that's a nice blade. These are great prizes. The first place winner of the $350 is Joseph Sarna. And the second place is Peter Chenaleris. And third is James Givens. All right, the next category is for emerging makers is best traditional design or piece. And we have the Freud Super Dado set, the Micro Gripper, Micro Jig. And then in second place, we have the Ridge Carbide and Whiteside compact router bit set, and then Raw Rocket and a Freud crosscut blade for third. So the winner of the first place prize is Stan Paris. The second place prize, Gary Cokes. And the third place prize goes to Nicole Morales. All right, now we're moving into best contemporary category of emerging makers. And we have for first place is going to be a great carcass saw, a Freud saw blade, and a Panto Router Essential Bit Pack. I guess if you win that, you got to go out and buy a Panto Router. And then the vintage Stanley number 40 scrub plane. Wow, that looks pretty interesting. I think I want one of those. A Freud box joint cutter set. And in third place, the vintage number 6 Bailey. All right, it's time to go home. No, we're doing great. All right, so the first place prize goes to Christopher Broom. And in second place, we have Todd Brown. And in third place, Emily Atkins. All right, moving into the turning category for emerging makers, we have a bunch of prizes there. The Freud blade, the Bumbleshoots, Taiwan beeswax, joiners kits. That's the bottle stopper thing, and then a number of hand tools from Vintage Tool, and sorry, that was from Mike DiMaggio. And then in second place, we have another plane from Mike DiMaggio, Oneida Dust Deputy, the Bumbleshoots Finish, and a Freud 3/8 round of a bit, and then Bumbleshoots and the Oneida Dust Deputy for third place. And in first place, we have Rick Manganello. Second place goes to Ed Marks. And third will go to Stephen Wheeler. And in emerging makers category, for the best carving, we have first place gets Japanese pull saw. Wow, you get so many prizes here. A vintage Starrett 12-inch combo saw, a square by Mike DiMaggio again, and number of cutting tools, and $100 cash. Second place, $250 cash. That's pretty straightforward. And in third place, Milwaukee, the cordless screwdriver. Nice. And the McFeely's assorted items. So first place goes to Joseph Duhay. And second place goes to Laurie Farrell. And in third goes to Joseph Sarna. Now in the best decorative technical detail category for emerging makers, we have the first place will be a live edge slab from Woodworks at Lakeside Farm, and then a pinnacle square and the Freud adjustable bit set there. And then we have some vintage tool from Mike DiMaggio, the brace and bit, and a pinnacle T-square. And the first place winner for the slab goes to Randy Hoover. Second place goes to David Pickard. And third goes to Deanne Frank. The next category is now we move to the expert master class. And this, as you can see, the prizes are getting, well, they're getting more. Well, they're about the same, actually. But they're good. We have two in this category for Best Original Design of Expert Master. For first place, $350 gift certificate of Bits and Bits, and second is $250 gift certificate from Bits and Bits. And the first place winner, Best Original Design, Paul DiCarlo. First place. And in second place, it's James McLaughlin. All right. Move to the best traditional category in the expert and master. First place gets the gripper and a beautiful shoulder plane from Homestead, and then a Freud Premier general purpose blade. And then we have, for second place, gets a Ridge Carbide super combination blade and a Freud blade. So you'll be totally covered. So first place in the best traditional goes to Michelle Hal Wong. And second place goes to John Siegel. And in the Best Contemporary category for the expert and master level, we have the gripper, the blade, and the bit set, tongue and groove. And the second place is the Freud 8-inch stack dado and a Pinnacle 12-inch square. So the winner for Best Contemporary is Paul DiCarlo. Nice. And second is Michelle Halley Wong. All right, in the Expert Master Best Turning category, there is the gripper and $250 cash. And then for second place, the Freud adjustable set, Oneida Desk Deputy, and the Pinnacle 12-inch square. And the first place winner in Best Turning category, Douglas Finkel. And second place is Claude Dupuis. All right, for the Expert Master Level Best Carving, we will have the vintage 6 Irwin chisels from Mike DiMaggio and a $100 gift card from Lee Valley and a $250 cash second prize. And the best carving goes to Jeffrey Pfister. And in second place is Timothy Griffin. In the Best Decorative Technical category, Expert Master Level, the first place prize will be the SawStop Revolution miter gauge. And in second prize will be the vintage 5-inch plane by Mike DiMaggio and the Freud Premier thin curve blade. Nice. So the first place for Best Decorative Turning category is Claude Dupuis. And second place is Jeffrey Pfister. The Judges Awards. So we have 3 Judges Awards, each worth $750. So those are actually going to be awarded by the judges. Am I correct? The judges coming up for this? Here we go, judges.
So one of the things that has kept me excited about being a furniture maker and kept me interested in furniture making for all the time that I've been doing it is because it's afforded me the opportunity to be a lifelong student. I love, good? Oh, all right. Are you composing or am I not loud enough? I'm usually plenty loud, so. You know, pretty much every piece that I make and everything that I do gives me an opportunity to learn new techniques and learn new things about myself and about the material and about the process. And for the last 10 years, I've also had the privilege of being a teacher. And the secret, I think, of being a teacher is that I think that I'm just secretly a student that's just one chapter ahead of all the students. And that process of teaching and learning and exploring ideas, there's a lot of give and take. And so the piece that I chose to award my award to was a piece that came out of a class that I taught, actually. And it was slightly jarring to see it initially because, you know, I was like, oh, holy cow, that's a piece that I designed. And I chose it because I wanted to acknowledge how we're all in this, I think really the sharing of knowledge and that give and take between teacher and student, and that learning process is such an important part of what the Guild does and why I choose to do this. And this particular piece, when it left the class, was not completely finished. There was no finish on it. There was no drawer. There was no pull. And it was just so inspiring to see it completed at a really high level. And I have the exact same piece that I built as a demo model sitting on my bench that's still unfinished. And so it's, frankly, it's inspired me to say, oh, I should actually take the time to finish that piece. So, I'm awarding my award to, and I'm going to butcher this last name. I apologize, Ed, because it's Ed Freyenhagen, and it's the wall cabinet.
Good evening, Woodworkers. First of all, I just want to say this is a huge honor. I came up here 16 years ago, and I think as soon as I planted up here, the Guild welcomed me with open arms. So I'm really thankful for this community, but I'm also really grateful for the friendships that I have, and I think it's really important that we're all there for each other. For some reason, when I was here this weekend, I just had simplicity on my mind. I saw Douglas's walnut bench here, and I just really loved those gentle curves. I found them to be like very, very inviting. I love the efficiency of the design. I find it very repeatable, and you match that with some really good wood. You got something really special on your hands. So welcome, congrats to Douglas.
Good evening, everyone. I guess the best is, as always, saved for last. My judge's choice is a bowl. Imagine that. I'm a turner, and I'm drawn to bowls. The piece that I chose as my judge's choice is a very well-turned bowl. It has wonderful curve from rim to foot, which is essential to making something not only functional but aesthetically pleasing to the eye. The piece has wonderful ambrosia markings in it, and the maker of this bowl knew enough to let the wood and the grain and the ambrosia markings be the star in this. He balanced the piece on the lathe perfectly so that the ambrosia streaks were the star, and I'm very proud to announce that Ron Pulio's Untitled Bowl is my judge's choice.
So it's largely been the case. So this is my third year judging this competition, and I think every year there's just been one piece that immediately stood out. You know, the way that we've done this is that usually individually we will walk around the show and just get some initial impressions about the work and see what pops. And in this case, after the three of us did this, we all said the same piece. I mean, there just really wasn't any question about which piece was standing out. Is there anything? You're a carver. Do you have anything you want to?
I think we were all in agreement. I think the proportions, the lifelike portrayal of this piece was just really something special. I mean, it got to the point where I thought actually feathers were even plucked in there. It's really magnificent. The creativity behind it, I think, is really something special. And do you have anything?
Ditto.
Perfect.
And the name is?
And the award goes to Jeffrey Pfister for Never-Nevermore.
Well deserved.
Awesome.
Anyway, thanks for coming. Looking for any positive and negative feedback so we can get even better next year. So thanks again for coming. Thanks to everybody.